I title my sermons in August when I plan our worship calendar for the year. This title was easy and was actually named the year before when I thought Megan Henry, who was one of our intern ministers last year, she and I were actually planning to co-preach this, but then that got derailed, so I just pushed it off to this year. This is to say, I have had more than a year and a half to prepare for this sermon. What women want. And that seems easy enough because I have a front row seat into the question. And yet, all this time later, I'm still not sure what women want. Now, I have said that in several different rooms. I've made a joke in more than one place saying, I don't know what women want. And I will tell you that the men in earshot have unfailingly told me they know what women want. Yesterday, I decided I'm going to run a Google search. What women want? Sermon. I found many, many preachers have approached this subject. They're all men. And in case you're curious, they believe women want quiet homes, faithful men to provide for them, and good sex. One Baptist preacher used the Song of Solomon as his foundational text for his sermon. This is what the passage is. It says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your scent. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder young women love you. Take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers." So I guess there's a reason people really love the Bible. And I'm not saying that that's not what women want. I'm just suggesting maybe there's more to it than that. I then went into some women-only spaces, and I asked the same question. What do women want? Interesting that no one mentioned sex, and I'm really not sure what to make of that. But they did ask for their reproductive rights back. They said they want access to halls of power and to get paid the same as men in their fields. They want to be heard and seen and considered in a whole variety of ways. And almost universally, they want pockets. Some of them wanted pockets in their clothing so badly they sent videos publicly and privately demonstrating this deep desire. It was the only issue that had video support. And even then, the answers seemed incomplete. I think I figured out why. The first problem is it's too huge a question. What women? The ones in Midtown? In the suburbs? White women? Young women? Immigrant women? Are we including trans women? And yes, of course we are. What about women in the Pacific Islands or sub-Saharan Africa? What do those women want? The second problem, the one I find really interesting, is that women don't always know what they want. This is true, by the way, for men too, and for transgender people. We don't always know what we want. And as much as women would rail against the idea that they don't want men making decisions for them, and almost none of them do, many will say that they'd like not to think about what they want. Every once in a while, just tell me. Just tell me what we're doing on Saturday night. Make a plan, and I'll go. I don't want to have to do the thinking. But that temporary reality doesn't define the larger desire. Women would most certainly like to be the ones doing the thinking. And when they're done thinking, they'd like to write and speak and know others are paying attention, and even that their thoughts can have an effect on the course of events. Women want to be full participants in the social fabric. They want to be proportionally accurate. They want to be part of creating the world that we inhabit together. I like to think of social progress as something that moves forward, sometimes slowly but consistently. Life, as it was understood 1,000 years ago, isn't close to what it is now, right? Literacy is the norm, it's not the exception, as is indoor plumbing. Women are likely to survive giving birth. Children are likely to survive their first 5 years of life. We have vaccines and antibiotics and mass transportation. Things like slavery and child marriage might still be with us, but are not in any way accepted in social institutions. The arc of the universe does bend toward justice, even if it takes a very long time and a lot of pushing. What's missing in that story is the steps backward on the journey, the bumps and glitches that stop or reverse progress. The long view shows us that by pushing, scientists, the engineers, the activists, that we do eventually get to the next stage. But the short view gives us some insight into the little setbacks, the resistance that those people encountered in their efforts to make life better for more people. We are living in one of those glitches. Voting rights, reproductive health rights, education, the liberal world order. We've been doing well for the last 50 years, moving forward, expanding access across the board, and now we're not. We've hit a bump. Voting rights are being challenged, specifically for people of color. Education is being revamped in some states to look like it did 70 years ago, before so much progress was made. And fascism is on the rise across even the most stable of democracies, and our own beloved nation among them is in serious peril. If we take the long view, we can assume that these particular obstacles will be long forgotten in time, that the human project will learn and grow and get over its current spasm of fear and narrow-mindedness. But in the short run, this is a painful and often frightening moment to be living through. There are plenty of examples, but none more dramatic than the Supreme Court decision to overturn their own ruling in the case of Roe v. Wade, eliminating the national right to terminate a pregnancy, thereby putting the decision in the hands of state governments, most notably on the radical right. The ramifications of this are deep and wide, cutting through American society in ways we hadn't dared imagine. We have children raped and pregnant, being forced to continue to live in their trauma. We have women whose lives are endangered because of complicated pregnancies. We have women during miscarriages denied treatment because the doctors are afraid it will look like they performed an abortion, which in some places has become a criminal act. We have children being brought to term only to die from horrific malformation. So I'm not going to actually get into any of those stories in detail because they're so painful. They're really even traumatizing to hear, but they're real. So what do women want? American women want access to health care, the freedom to make their own decisions about their own health. They want their doctors to be partners in caring for their bodies, and they want their own opinions and needs to be the deciding factors in making choices about their own lives. This is true in countries other than ours, although plenty of them are moving forward, not caught in this spasm of conservatism and misogyny. Mexico, once subjugating its pregnant women to the whims of a male-dominated Catholic Church, has quickly surpassed us in their care for women's health. And they aren't alone. In the last few years, 38 countries have eased restrictions or increased access to abortions, even as ours is attempting to make more national laws against things like chemical abortion deemed safe and non-invasive. But this isn't the only thing women want. Around the world, we can hear their voices calling for some fundamental rights most of us see as natural and moral and worthy of global attention. Women in Afghanistan want to leave their homes freely. Women in Vatican City want to vote. Women in Kenya want to walk the streets without threats of violence. Women in Japan want pay equity. Women in Ghana want to send their girls to school rather than needing them home to search for water. Women in Haiti want to be able to feed their children. Women in China want protection against sexual harassment at work. Women in Uganda want to go to work outside their homes. Women in the Philippines want access to sex education and birth control. Women in Cuba want to wait until they're adults before they get married. Women in Nigeria want representation in their government. Women in Egypt want to travel without their father or husband's permission. Women in Nicaragua want to be safe inside their homes. It's easy to point at other countries and think we're better off, which we largely are. But when we listen to the things women want, we know these are things we want too. Our access to them might be more readily available, but we aren't yet in a place where women are safe on the streets or in their homes, or have equal access to health care, or pay equity, or governmental representation. We all want the freedom to move about in our towns or to travel in our own countries and abroad. We all want education for ourselves and our children. We want not to have to worry about getting enough to eat or having clean water. In Iran, the wearing of a hijab is required legally under a law putting great pressure on all women because the brutality of the consequence is such that no one wants to break it. Women want to choose their clothing. But in Missouri, the State House of Representatives made a law 2 months ago requiring a woman to wear a blazer or a cardigan over their clothing. We can look at Japan's patriarchal society with their 22% gender pay gap, more than double that of the global average. But in the US, ours isn't much better, coming in around 19%. I'm actually on a quest to find out what that looks like in clergy circles because I have reason to believe it's wider than the national average. Male ministers make significantly more than female or trans ministers, even in liberal religions like ours. We like to think women here are safer, but 1 in 3 American women have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner, and more than 40% have experienced violence or harassment on the street. So we're doing better than many, but it's not a time to rest on our laurels, especially as we seem to be moving backward in too many arenas. And to be clear, if you're a trans woman, every risk is increased and access to all the things that make us safe is decreased. We're not where we could be or should be or want to be. And of course, women aren't a monolith. The person who wrote that weird law in Missouri was a woman. Plenty of women, given the choice, wear a hijab. And not everyone wants to go to school or thinks abortions are morally defensible. Which brings us back to this question of what women want. We want a lot of things. Some of us want to play sports, and some want to watch sports, and others have no interest in sports at all. Some want to cook and even enjoy cleaning, while others find those tasks unpleasant or debasing. Some want to raise children. Some want to marry men. Some want to marry women. Some want never to marry anyone. Some wear flats, some wear heels, some want all-day childcare, some want to stay home with their kids. Many of us say we want friends who we can call on or who will call on us in return. But what we mean by socializing can be very different, one person to the next. For some, that means having a friend over for coffee, and for some, it means clubbing until the sun comes up. Some want to work, some don't. Some want to work from home, others don't. Most of all, what women want is to be the ones who can figure out what women want. They want the freedom of self-determination to do or not do all the things in whatever ways they want. They want to be the ones to answer the question, what do women want? Each for themselves, without interference. And they want to do the things they want to do all across the board. There is no single answer like there is no single woman. There are billions of answers for billions of people, all of whom are seeking safety and comfort and joy in their own ways. And I suppose, therefore, our task is to let them.